All right, so listen, first off, thank you for taking the time to talk with me, talk about recovery. And the reason I, decided to start doing this in the first place was I called it Recipes for Recovery.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that, I believe that I heard Yogi say it actually, and so I'm credit where credit's due.
Hashtag Project 180.
So, he said, it's like baking a cake. For consistency, you need to follow the recipe.
Right.
And so, what struck me about that was that everybody has a different recipe for a cake. And so, some people have more flour, some people more sugar, more egg, more milk, whatever the case is. The point of it is that there's also lots of different type of cake, right? So there's angel food cake, there's muffins, there's pound cake, there's
Devil's food cake.
Devil's food cake. Yeah. So you know what I'm saying. So, but really the intention in recording these sessions is it helps me in my recovery. It helps, hopefully it helps you in your recovery. And then ultimately, whoever watches it might identify with what we're talking about and get something out of that. So we won't, a couple things, don't mention specific fellowships, because
Understood.
Because those are anonymous.
Absolutely.
So, we don't want to endorse, lend.
Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with that said, for me, like my recipe is kind of like going to meetings, calling my sponsor, doing step work, fellowship with other people, being of service. And, with those 5 ingredients, I feel better. I just feel better, right? And
Right.
I wish I could explain that to people and how that works. It's the way I see it really is the way Sam explained it one night, which is like one of the first things to kind of get healed is your spiritual life,
Right.
And then comes other things. So first off, like what brought you to recovery? Obviously, and I said the same thing with John when I interviewed with him, which was that like I had gone to jail. I came here to Harvest House, and so just explain a little bit about your background. And
Okay. So, like you said, I think a little bit of my history, because my history is what went into the making of my cake,
right,
so to speak. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, born to a mother who was in addiction, in abusive relationships. So, I seen a lot of that in the earlier home life. I was made a ward of the state of Massachusetts, so that's where I'm from. Group homes, foster care, the whole gambit. So, I was always very intelligent, but I'm one of the people that, fell through the cracks, so to speak. Nobody ever recognized it, no mentorship. And I was basically seen as an adult at 15 years old, and left to my devices in the streets, and one thing about it, those of us who are from the streets, we learn to survive in that environment, right? So by whatever means necessary, whether it's in the dealing of drugs or the robberies, and that's kind of where I was at. And I found myself being emancipated from a program in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and came home from a work, TK O'Malley's in Massachusetts, to find that I was being evicted at 3 o'clock in the morning, covered in dishwater, right? And the only thing I knew was the streets. So what do you think I did? Picked up the pistol and went and did what I did. And that led into a lot of active addictions. And, I wound up working for a day labor place up there. And we got a job in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and it was setting up a circus. And I was introduced to that lifestyle, and not a carnival, a circus.
Yeah,
it's different.
There's a distinction.
There's absolutely. Circus people like us, we say we're not trying to drug and rape you. We're putting on a show.
Right.
No offense to carnies. However, and that showed me a different side of life financially. I made a lot more money, legit, extremely and excessively fast. And I was introduced to a lot harder drugs from a different side of it, the usage side. and I subsequently wound up here in Sarasota, Florida. Still in active addiction, and I decided to come off the road. You know, we had a grueling tour date that was 300 cities in 10 months.
I'm gonna move this back a little bit.
It was 300 cities in 10 months, and it was very grueling. And when I decided to come off the road, you know, I wasn't making the same type of money. So I naturally went back to what I knew, which was selling drugs and robbery. And I wound up committing some felony crimes. Cost me 25 years of my life in the Department of Corrections, 5 in the feds, and 20 in the state of Florida. So I was just released in April. But I found myself in prison, still involved in the same behavior, active in the gang life, very active in the gang life. And I found myself behind a door where I couldn't flush my own toilet, facing more charges. And, when you're in a room by yourself for an excessive period of time, you start counting costs. When you don't have property and no books, no paper, no Bibles, you can't flush your own toilet, you start to count the costs. Things just weren't adding up. So, the spiritual sense, you can say I found God while living in hell. So I found heaven while in hell, right?
Yeah.
And, it moved from the brain to the heart. And I knew that I had to do something different if I wanted to get out, if I wanted to actively make it. I had to do something different. And so I took some courses, victim impact and cognitive behavior therapies, anger replacements, and I started to actively work on myself. Why do I think the way I do? Why do I get involved in the things I get involved in? What are my traumas?
Right.
And so, I found that I had spent so much time covering up childhood traumas from being molested and just, from going through these things, that I've spent so much time isolating myself while being in a room full of people, but yet being alone.
Yeah.
And I put on all these masks. So I sought to be what everybody else wanted me to be.
And on that we've agreed. And so and the reason I wanted to talk with you specifically is we were just talking about Chris did an IQ test and he had an IQ of 124. And so what I have found too is that addicts as a whole are very intelligent people. They really are. And it may not be specifically like the cognitive IQ.
Mm-hmm.
I asked Kat a question one time and I said, let me ask you, do you think that there's a certain type of emotional intelligence that happens as a result of addiction? She's like, I do. And I think that's true. And I think there's we can tell when we can tell a hustler from a mile away, right?
Can we?
and so anyway, this is why I wanted to bring Chris in on the picture, because he has this ability to take a abstract concept and to break it down into simpler parts, simple moving parts that most people can understand. So I wanted to throw that in there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the the encouragement and the compliment.
Yeah.
So when I started counting my costs and working on myself, I realized that I put a lot of scar tissue over scars to the point where I didn't know what my original scar was. And so I started to peel the onion back, so to speak, right? And I started getting to the root of a lot of my traumas. And I'm still working on myself. It's always going to be a working process. This is a journey. It's not a race. It's a marathon.
It's not a destination.
Right. It's a forever walk, It's forever. So to go to an old nursery thing.
One day at a time, but yes.
Right. So the Guinness World Book of Records lists the longest sobriety is 24 hours. And that's a fact. Tomorrow's not here.
Congratulations on our Guinness Book of World Records.
That's it. We're record holders, right, brother?
Yeah, right.
So it's, there's an old cartoon that shows the tortoise and the hare, right? And so many people never get the point of this cartoon. And while it's a cartoon, it has such profound moral implication. The tortoise just keeps trucking along.
Yep.
So he's not moving fast, but he's not moving slow, but he's moving.
Yeah.
Always forward, and he's aware. And the hare keeps playing games and trying to take these switchbacks, and in the end,
he goes way fast and takes a nap.
Right, and finds himself behind. The tortoise just didn't stop, just kept chucking along. And recovery is that way. You know what I mean? And I can't worry about tomorrow's problems because they're tomorrow. It's not here. Though I plan for tomorrow to be here, it's not promised. And yesterday's over with. So whatever I did yesterday, I can't change it. I can only move better for a better future. And And
I like to throw in this piece of scripture: "Let today's problems be sufficient for today. For tomorrow will have its troubles of its own."
right, so in the Lord's Prayer, right, it speaks of this day.
Yeah.
Give me what I need for this day.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people miss the point that when he asked Yeshua, he says, teach us to pray. And Yeshua responded, pray like this. He didn't say to pray this. He said, pray like this. It was a guideline.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so with me, my cake, my recipe, it became first I needed to know who I was.
Yeah.
You know, so that was recognize things that I've been through. Then I had to recognize, where do I want to be? You know, so I find myself writing priority lists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wrote myself a eulogy for my old life because that's dead and gone.
Yeah.
I can't change it. I can only grow from it. So then I wrote myself a 4-page letter of the man I want to be.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of people say, I want to be a good man. But what does that look like? What is a good man?
Yeah.
You know, is that somebody that has integrity? Does he honor his word? Does he honor his commitments? If I tell somebody I'm finna show up, am I there?
Right.
You know, if I tell somebody I'm going to be there for them and they call me and I don't answer the phone, then I'm not honoring that.
Yeah.
So I honor God, my Father, first and foremost. So one of the key recipes to my cake is God.
Yep.
I start there and everything goes out from there. I don't want to move. There's a song that I found on the Pando app while I was in prison. And I became very close in my faith. And the song says, I won't move until he speaks. And it's on an album called God So Good.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of changed my life to hear that song because I thought about it like, man, what if I don't move until he tells me to?
Yeah.
You know, until I hear that still small voice, that discernment that pushes me. So I start with God and I move outward.
Yep.
And then I got myself a sponsor as well.
Yep.
And I faithfully call him in every situation. I quit my job the other day.
I know.
You know, I was being belittled. And I realized that, you know, it hit me profoundly. Like, man, in my addictions, I would accept you talking to me like that.
Because you wanted something out of it.
Because I wanted something you had. So I accepted being called a baser. And I accepted being called less than and being talked to as I was less than. But I don't have to anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to be accepted or accept that you treat me less than. Because I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm not. You know what I mean? And I moved from that. And so it felt good while I still had a sense of failure.
Yeah.
Because I don't quit things. I don't give up. Men don't lay down, right?
Right.
But that wasn't laying down. That was not accepting being treated as not a man.
More like turning the page.
That was it. I turned the page to find what else God has for me.
Yeah.
So that being said, you know, I got my sponsor. I start with God. I have my sponsor. I make the meetings. I do the step work. And I'm proactive in helping people as best I can.
Yeah.
You know, I've got almost 2.5 years of sobriety now.
And let me say this, you do. You absolutely do. Like, I not only did I hear you call Amanda, but, you know, obviously I saw her at Target, and the point of it was that, like, you just lost your job, but you knew that she and her son needed things.
Right.
And gave her those gift cards we got from fatherhood class.
Absolutely.
And to me, that just speaks worlds about you. You know what I mean? It speaks volumes about your character, your integrity, and your commitment, and that being of service. You know, I think that you're exactly right. And I say, you know, I've said this before. I think that, like, for me, God, higher power, and recovery are just like intertwined.
Like, first step, surrender.
Yeah, surrender. Absolutely.
You've got to admit that, bro, I'm unmanageable. And my life was clearly unmanageable to the point where somebody else had to manage it for 25 years of my life.
Right.
You know, so that just shows how unmanageable mine was.
Right, right.
So it's like, bro, I had to surrender. And I had to really give that away.
Well,
you know, and there's a phrase that I dislike that people say, well, I gave it to God. Well, who you think gave it to you?
Yeah.
So, you know, I look at a lot of things as refining moments. And I also think that God puts people in our life because he trusts us with them. So, you know, you spoke of Amanda, who we've become an item.
Yeah.
You know, that's my significant other now.
Right.
And I didn't, you know, you're exactly right. I seen that she has just got a new job and, you know, she's 97 days into her sobriety and praise God for that.
Yeah.
And she's a strong, beautiful woman and she's learning to be independent as opposed to codependent. And she has some needs that needed to be met. And now my motives are simple now.
Yeah.
You know, I check my motives before I do things. What is my intention here?
Right.
And so my intention was simple. I know she needs things. You know what I mean? So she, like me, is in a halfway house. She, you know what I mean, is lacking in undergarments, and she's lacking in, you know, her son's struggling in deodorants. So, you know, I have a ton of hygiene upstairs. I'm huge on hygiene. I've got this thing, so I've got 10 things of shampoos and conditioners that are,
Right.
you know, so I made sure she's got her conditioner. I made sure she's got things for her hair. She's got long, beautiful hair. Made sure, you know, you got your deodorants, the 2 gift cards. You know, that's $100. You can go get, you know, the undergarments you need. You can go get the razors you need. You can go get your son some things he needs.
Right.
So I got to play ball with him yesterday.
Yep.
You know, and I also got to see that other men that have been in her life who have played ball with him, they only sought to dominate him, trying to impress her. And I let him win, you know what I mean? But I also got to teach him some things.
Right.
I got to explain, so to the point where he's shown up at a couple meetings and sat down just to hear perspective. And for a 13-year-old, you know, young growing boy to sit down and hear some of the stuff his mom went through and
Yeah.
hear some of the stuff that other people got through, you know. So I also found out that he tried marijuana. Okay, well, you got to sit down in a room full of addicts, and you
Right.
got to hear some stories that started with marijuana.
Some
Right.
consequential stories.
So
Yeah.
then you also got to hear stories of how your sphere of influence affects the way you think.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big believer in you're a product of the people that you hang around,
The environment.
because they influence your thought, not necessarily the environment. We're in an environment that's in the middle of the hood,
No, I agree. When I say environment, it is really because we
social environment.
Yeah, so just in perspective, that there's I think like 52 men here, and the point of it is that I don't. There's a handful of guys I hang out with and I talk with.
Right.
A handful, because I see that, you know, I see that simple desire to stay clean, to do what the next right thing is, to put recovery first.
Facts.
And generally, when I'm putting God and recovery first, you know, I don't have to worry nearly as much about the rest. I was working on the 3rd step, and I finished writing on the 3rd step last night in the step working guide. And, you know, we made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. And, you know, like and it's just like you said, there's these principles of, you know, because the first step is about surrender, but it's also about honesty. And then, you know, then in the second step, it's like this, it's willingness. And we keep building on these spiritual
And that
principles.
key word, willingness. You know what I'm saying? This is not forced on you.
Right.
You have to be willing to become sober. You have to be willing to get rid of the toxicity in your life. And sometimes it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've built relationships in our chaos.
Yeah.
And these people have become comfortable. So for those who study history, the Declaration of Independence in the preamble, it has a statement that is so profound. And it says that society would rather deal with the abuses of the chaos because of the comfortability. And I'm obviously paraphrasing it instead of, you know, quoting the entire preamble.
Yeah,
but I can if you need it.
I know.
But, you know, that's profound psychology, that a lot of the times we'll just stick with what we know, no matter how toxic it is and harmful.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that I now today can take an objective look instead of subjective and emotional attachment, I can objectively look back and say, man, that's not good for me.
Yeah.
And then I can take a stand against it. And, you know, that is power. There's power in that.
Absolutely. And you said attachment. I think it's a fundamental topic about recovery too, because there is, like, I heard this guy say, you know, sometimes I'm tripping over my past, and I agree with that. And it's like, you know, I used to have a house and, you know, this and that and a car and it was like all these material trappings, but ultimately, like, and I might even argue that, like, the good times where I thought I was secure in those, you know, made me feel secure enough that when COVID came around, I stopped going to meetings and stopped staying in touch with recovery. And then next thing you know, I stopped praying. You know, I went and got high.
So it was a fiscal response. It was a fiscal security, which is, in the grand scheme of things, nothing.
Right.
Because Money comes and it goes.
Yeah.
And you can't take it with you when you go.
You're exactly right.
But one thing about it, Yeshua told us in the Gospels, in Luke chapter 10, he says, I give you all authority. You know, when he raised Lazarus from the dead, he told him, he says, why are you so impressed? You'll do greater things.
Yeah.
You know, so I know that I have this power. We all do. And knowing that when this toxicity comes, or these things comes, or when the enemy attacks us, when this disease of addiction attacks me, I know that I have authority.
Yeah.
And
Where I was going with that is that, like, what I had done was become attached to things.
Yes.
And so that, and so then I realized in relationships too that we have these different attachment styles, right? And you mentioned codependence, and you know, I say that like codependence, to paraphrase another person, to paraphrase, is like the mother of all addictions.
Yes.
Because
facts.
we sit there and
I can't do it without them.
yeah, spouse leaves, relationship with kids. It's like,
How do I process this now?
Yeah.
How do I live life on life's terms now?
right.
And you know, I had to get to a point where I first had to get to know me. And that was the key part of my cake next to God is, who am I?
Yeah.
And that has allowed me to have the power to stand independently. I don't need you in my life. I choose you to be there.
Yeah.
And I can choose you to go just as fast.
Just as fast. Yep.
So the moment you start affecting my peace,
Yep.
the moment I start taking things home from work and it's making me angry at home where I lay my head and should be comfortable,
Right.
dude, that's toxic.
Yeah.
And toxicity only breeds anger. Anger eventually explodes unexposed. So what do I do about it? I remove it. So there's a word called prepare, not P-A-I-R, P-A-R-E, and it means to remove an excess or irregularity.
Yeah.
So I have to pare things out of my life.
Yeah.
The same was done to the disciples, 2 by 2. They were prepared. And they were so prepared that when they were sent out, what he told them, don't bring anything.
Yeah. Right.
Don't bring an extra cloak, a walking stick. Don't even bring money.
Right.
And if they don't receive you, shake the dust off. That's profound, because if you don't accept me, and I know I'm valuable,
Yeah.
if you don't accept me, bro, I shake the dust off.
Yeah.
I shake the dust off.
Yeah. You have to. That's no. It's amazing too. I had another friend say call it emotional resonance, right? Where like there's this thing. I almost like magnetic attraction, where like your recovery is attractive to me, and so it is those kind of things where, like, in relationships like mine and yours, where I know that I still get to learn, and you know, that's one of my, you know, key takeaways from every single day is just to remain teachable.
I agree 100%. Dude, we have to remain teachable. You know, the saying that you can't teach an old dog do tricks is so retarded.
And you never know. Like, people will say, you know, it's the message, not the messenger. And it's true, because I have, you know, the most bizarre things that I have learned in my life came from places where I did not expect them. Like, hauling someone to a meeting, and next thing you know, we're talking, and whether it
That's
was,
how our relationship started.
Yeah.
Being going to church.
yeah, and whether or not, like, you know, whether or not that person knows it or not, they were either teaching me something that I needed to apply in my life, that like we talked about attributes, like there's an attribute that I see in them that I want to apply to my life, and sometimes that same ride produces a result where you're like,
I don't need to be
want
around that guy.
Don't want that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I seek every day as a growing opportunity. And I learn from everybody I come in contact to. So there was a little kid at a meeting today. He couldn't have been more than 18 months. And he was just throwing a ball around the room. Right. And I just learned that, like, bro, he has a simplistic viewpoint on life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's 18 months old. He hasn't had the life's problems or the trials. And it was a teaching experience for me, because I looked and I said, wow, perspective, right? So the perspective is like, bro, I got this ball.
Yep.
There's this room full of people. I'm going to throw the ball and somebody's going to throw it back.
Yep.
And, you know, it was just simplified everything. And I was like, man, if you apply that to your daily life, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? Like, bro, how easy is our day if we just simplify it to the basics? bro, I need to be sober. I need food. I need water. I need clothes. I need a roof over my head. I need to get to and from work. What are my needs beyond that?
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. When John and I were riding in the car, we had these gift cards, and I was like, there's a couple things I want, but I really don't want much. Like, I bought a bathing suit because I don't have one.
Fact.
Bought a belt.
Dude, we got beaches everywhere. You should have one.
And bought a hat. And I was like, because it's sunny all the time. And so I was like, but like, I had no intention of going and spending all my money on the gift card. I was just like, these are the things I kind of need, a little bit of what I want. And so there's this part where, like, I'm grateful. And, gratitude is one of those things where I tell people all the time, like, you can feel grateful, you can say you're grateful.
But show me.
But take the time and write it down, because I say neurologically, you use several different parts of your brain to actually write down what you're grateful for. So
it creates neuroplasticity.
Correct.
That's the term.
Yep, neuroplasticity is kind of a catch term, but what sometimes people don't realize is, like, saying it involves this much of your brain, but then when you start to write, well,
now you're operating motor functions, memories,
your eyes,
right.
You're doing hand-eye coordination, and it's
my buddy Stitch, y'all. So I got Stitch today,
and so that gratitude becomes concrete. It becomes something tangible on that paper that I can see. And I mostly on my gratitude list are people's names.
Right.
And frankly, to be honest with you, I don't sit there. I mean, I do write, like, clothes or whatever. I do write, like, simple things like that, but I'm not, like, I'm grateful for my car. And I've said this in a meeting before, which is that, I used to have this nice car, and now I have this car. And in some respects, I am more grateful for this car than I am for my previous nice automobile. And here's something else, is that when in my nice automobile, to be honest with you, like, I was taking my kids to school and picking them up, which is super important, but at the other end of the spectrum, like, when I got the car, all of a sudden, I don't know, like, it's one of those things where people ask me for a ride, and they're always like, sorry, I don't, can I get a ride? And I'm always like,
sure.
I have no idea how grateful I am that you're asking me for a ride. So,
and that I can provide it.
Yes.
And you know what? I get that, because, I got out of prison April 27th. You know what I mean? So I'm not even 60 days out of prison yet. I got my license yesterday. Dude, I bought my car. I got a 2005 Buick LeSabre Custom.
Mm-hmm.
I went and got the title today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going to register it. You know what I mean? And dude, it's grateful that when you're doing just the next right thing, it's just that simple, and you're helping people and you're giving back. And one of the things that was said was, boy, at one of the meetings was time, bro. It was actually Dr. Sutton. We were at a meeting with him, and time, we don't get it back.
No.
So it's like, bro, if I give you my time, bro, I'm giving you something that I can't replace. So what are you doing with the time I give you?
Right.
I'm doing something like this right here, but this is a valued section of my time.
Yeah.
But the benefits, man, if it touches just one person.
I said the same thing the other
just
day.
one. If one person sees this,
yeah,
and they like, man, I want that.
Because for me, and this is the other reason, is that, your story is profound in the respect that, you'll say, hey, listen, I went in at 16 and came out at 42.
Right.
And so what, to me, like, I went to jail, spent 7.5 months in jail, and it's we're talking about somebody that did a stretch, a big stretch, and went through all the trials and tribulations, and yet we have these similarities, like,
yes,
and so one of the things that I say too about recovery in general is that when you find recovery, boy, it really fucks you up, because if you start doing the wrong thing, it screws you up big time.
Yes. So one of the things I found when I started working on myself in prison was that I couldn't hoard it to myself. That there were others going through similar things. And, you know, I found that all the things I've been through in my earlier life, even leading up into prison, and how I got through those things, that they needed to be shared. So I used to be angry at God. I used to be angry,
I can agree with that.
like, man, you're God, dude. You could have stopped that from happening. You're God, but you didn't. You let me be molested. You let me get physically abused. You let me get shot. You've let me get stabbed. And then I realized, like, he didn't. That's not what he wanted from me.
He gives us
But
free will.
he gave us free will, and somebody else was disobedient, and pathways opened up, and he allowed the disobedience. But because he gave us a choice, and that disobedience allowed me to be molested.
Yeah.
But now that I've gone through that and I've worked on that trauma, I can notice those signs in somebody else, and I can help them through it.
Right.
And I can tell them how I got through it, and I can tell them how I leaned on God and how I leaned on therapy.
Yep.
So I recommend therapy.
Yeah.
These are people who go to get trained to help you process the trauma of it. You know, and you've got therapy for all kinds of things, and then you have broad spectrum therapy where you pay somebody to sit in a room and just vent.
Yeah.
And you know, you really pay $185 an hour so somebody could just sit there and nod their head, but really they're thinking of other things.
Yeah.
You know, people like Kat that you mentioned. This is a woman who has been through trauma.
Yeah. Right.
And has taken the time to sit and listen to yours and to help you get through it. And that's beautiful, man. And this is what we do in recovery.
Yeah.
So, you know, prison, I wound up becoming a GED teacher.
Right.
I wound up becoming somebody who actively got on the rec yards and preached the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you would have told people 25 years ago that you know, Russo G was going to be standing on the rec yard preaching, they would have laughed in your face and called you nuts and tried to have you institutionalized.
Right.
If you would have told people that I was going to be a GED teacher, boy, they would have laughed at you. You know, and I spend my days now, for instance, I'm on the bus the other day, and a guy got on the bus, and, you know, he was clearly intoxicated, you know, off of all kinds of substances, clearly, but he was on his way to go make a drop, a urinalysis. And he was like, man, you know, and he was kind of, and boy, I had the ability to stop him and talk to him and invite him to a meeting that I was chairing.
Yep.
And, you know, what I didn't tell y'all was that he showed up yesterday.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So this man went and made his urinalysis drop and came to the meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that was significant because I talked to him after. And I'm like, bro, what'd you think? You know, and he's like, man, I need to keep coming back. I'm like, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
90 and 90, bro. Just keep coming.
Yeah.
Because we're going to love you when you don't love yourself.
And
And that's what I find surrounding me nowadays.
that-
Is some people in my life, my sister. I love my sister to absolute death. But while you're living in that addiction, I can't live with you.
yeah.
I have to love you from where you're at. And
Yep.
you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
What do I want more in life? Do I want this inanimate object that's controlling my mind?
Yep.
Or do I want to love a living being? And
Yeah. I think that when you get into addiction, the things that you put into your system just become this predictable outcome. And even though the outcome is a ridiculously miserable outcome where, you know, getting and finding ways to means get more. I mean,
Right.
it just becomes this vicious cycle. And that, you know, the saying, one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. It's like, you know, I'm a living example of that where, you know, just all I have to do is change my neurochemistry a little bit, and the next thing you know, I am off to the races.
oh man.
But I wanted to say that, you know, it's one of the things that I get, and it's the most bizarre concept in the world, is that I go into a meeting and they are relative strangers in my life, and then you go in and you're like,
Get vulnerable.
this is what's on my mind, and this is what's eating me up today, and this is what I'm grinding on, and you know, and nobody snickers at you, makes fun of you. Nobody talks. I'm not saying they don't talk behind your back. Some people may, but the point of it is that what I find is that there's acceptance in that meeting, and that what I share, you know, like you said, may end up affecting somebody else and say, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
And so it's the most, it's miraculous in that respect where like I go into a meeting and I say what's going on. And this is stuff that like I haven't said to my brother or my mom,
Right.
and
Spill your darkest secrets in a room full of strangers, right?
and for good reason, like because they can't relate. I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't be good listeners, but I think that they would probably be like, "You're out of your fucking mind. You're out of your mind."
Right.
And so it's something miraculous that happens. And I told my sponsor tonight, I don't know what it is, like this incremental healing that happens when I go to a meeting and I open my mouth and I share. And sometimes I just listen, but I go to I go, and somehow my soul just gets a little bit more comfortable, a little lighter.
Right.
If I share what's going on, I leave that meeting with less of a burden on my back. And I cannot explain it. Like, I can't explain it, God. And thank God, thank God that I'm in recovery again. Thank God that, that people stayed at meetings so I could come back to meetings.
Yes.
So, I am incredibly grateful. And like I said, I don't know how to explain the profoundness of that action of going to a meeting. But I do think this. I do think what happens is that there's that interconnection between between God and me, and recovery, where like maybe it's becoming a little bit more connected with God. Maybe it's by saying that out loud, it becomes less of a burden.
What's up, brother? How you doing, young man?
All I know is they got a new pill out. It's energized.
We're doing an interview.
We'll talk to you later.
All right. Excuse us. So, three things I wanna touch on. First off, love. This is a verb. It takes actions.
Thank you.
It takes no action to hate somebody.
Like gratitude.
Right. These are words of action. To say you're gratuitous or that you have gratitude, but if you can show me that. I'm not one of these people who uses the word love. So biblically speaking, there's 4 types. Storge. I love that song. I love that. No, you're a fan of that song and that's your favorite pet. That's called storge. And you've got what's called philia, brotherly love. But not the brothers you're born to, the ones you choose in your life. Mm-hmm. Eros, the love between your and your significant other, your wife. And then agape. These are 4 different types of love, but they all require actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to show this.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to touch on is there's a quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but I'll get the gist of the meaning out. And it says that self-deception, to deceive yourself or to tell yourself lies, this is the deception that is stronger than prison bars and steel, bro. And it only adds another chain of heaviness behind you that you're going to drag forever. So the first key of my cake, is God, knowing myself, and stop lying to me.
Yeah.
I had to get honest with myself. So, when it tells you to make a searching and fearless moral inventory, this means, bro, don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to know where you messed up and where you're going to get right.
Yeah.
You've got to know this.
Right.
I can't make amends to nobody if I'm not honest with me.
Yeah.
Where have I allowed myself to be hurt and where have I hurt others?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then I also want to touch on that, bro, when somebody breaks your trust, you don't have to accept it. It says forgive and forget, and that's an impossibility. I can forgive you.
Yeah.
And I can let it go, but I don't have to continue to allow you to hurt me.
Right.
The bridge has to come from you to me now.
Those boundaries that you
Right.
that you put
Boundaries, man. So if you're new in recovery, set boundaries, man. Some people that you've had sexual relations with, or some people that you've gotten high with and you've thought they're your friend, bro, you're going to get clean, you're going to get sober, and you're going to have to set a boundary line, and you're going to have to mean it. You're going to have to say, hey, listen, I'm just not there no more. And you may have to cut people out of your life, and you may have to love them from a distance.
Yep.
And that's fine, because it's about you being the best you can be. It's about me being the best Chris I can be.
Yeah.
It's about me going, what do I want to be in life and where do I want to be? I'm 42, like you said. I don't got 30 years to work a job no more.
Right.
I have to do things for my future now.
Right.
I have to be the best I can be and start putting things to the side and saving them so that eventually I can retire somewhere comfortably. I want to pace a rocking chair to the east and watch the sun come up
Yeah.
on my property.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I want kids. I don't have any.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a married man yet. And I'm looking for my rib. I like to say my rib.
Yeah.
Adam took the rib out and made Eve, right? So I believe we were all made in pairs from that point forward. So I believe my rib is walking around, and I'm waiting for God to lead me back to my rib. You know, and it's for these things that I want and my needs. You know, I have to make my needs. So it's like, you know, the Apostle Paul says, run your race. But he also says to work out your fear with your salvation with fear and trembling. And he says that you have to work it out.
Yeah.
You know, we're all given a measure of faith, but it's on us to develop it.
Yeah.
This means we have to take risks in faith.
Yes. Absolutely. Positively.
Peter jumped out of a boat in a storm.
I was just talking with John. I start class next week, and I was like, and he's like, "Are you nervous?" And I was like, "I'm 53, and I'm going back to school next week." And to be honest with you, I'm a little worried. You know, you know.
Did I make the right choice?
The answer is, I don't know, but cognitively, I believe that I can do it. I
know you can do it.
I have enough experience to suggest that that's possible, but it doesn't make it doesn't take away a little bit of the anticipation of like, am I going to get this? Like, and because
see the real problem. I'm not going to say a problem. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. The real thing is, once you go to get it and you have your CDL and you do all this, are you still going to want to do it? Who knows, right?
Don't know.
But I'll tell you this. Pastor Darius Daniels, Change Church, he made a quote to me. Well, not to me, but he made a quote that I grabbed. He said, anxiety is an emotional thief that steals today's peace in anticipation of tomorrow's problems that may never come.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
You know what? And that's profound, because it's like, wait a minute. I'm sitting here stressing about something that may not even happen.
Yeah.
And all it's doing is causing me trauma.
I set that as a as a short-term goal, and not as like an end result. I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do this.
Where might it lead?
Yes.
And the key is to always be listening for that still small voice, right?
Yep.
For listening to, first off, what am I going to do with it? Okay. So I don't know. I may graduate and a job offer might open up to stay locally making millions of dollars. Or a job offer might open up that I'm just happy doing.
Yeah.
And that's the key, bro. I don't need $1 million to be happy anymore. I just want to be happy.
Yes,
I want a small circle of friends I can rely on, and that's the difference.
I want to be content, and to be honest,
I want to be a little more than content. I'm not going to say it, but
fair enough.
For me, contentment is just having a place to lay my head. I'm content now in a halfway house.
Yeah.
I want to be happy in my contention. So I want my own home.
Yeah.
I want my own car.
Yeah.
I want a small circle of friends that I can call. I like to call them 2 o'clock friends.
Yeah.
I can call you at 2 a.m. if I'm going through something, and I know Kurt's going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
I know Kurt's going to pick up the phone and say, brother, what are you struggling with?
Yeah.
I want a friend I can cry on his shoulder and not feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've got female friends.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They're real friends.
They're friends, man. There's a female friend I have. I am so grateful, dude. She picked up the phone all 25 years I was in prison. And there was nothing attached to it other than she loves me for who I am.
Yeah.
And in the midst of my deepest and darkest addiction, when I was a straight jerk, when I was robbing people and I was shooting guns, you know what I'm saying? She brought me food every night. When I got locked up, she answered the phone.
Yeah.
And she told me, I'm not finna give you no money. Because I know you're going to buy something with it and go get drugs.
Right.
But I'm not going to give you no money, but I'm finna order you a food package.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? And even though I could have spent that on drugs, her key concern was, are you eating?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's reliability. So me, I want to be a man that you can count on.
Yeah.
So I involve myself with people I can count on. I hang around people right now that own circuses, that are millionaires.
I know.
And I hang around people that are starting businesses and doing production, like productive things in society.
Right.
I hang around people that are active in their recovery.
Yeah.
That are active. They're taking action steps. And they're not talking about it, they're showing it.
Yep.
And that's the type of person I want to be. I'm not going to tell you it. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
People are so shocked around me that I've got a car. You know what I mean? That I have a car and I'm really not even, 50 days out yet. I've got a car bought and paid for. I've got the title. I've got insurance. I've got health insurance. I'm just doing the next right thing. These are grown man decisions that you have to think, man. I make myself priority list. 7 days, 30 days, 60, 90 days out. What are my priorities? Then I set myself goals.
Yep.
Then I write down how am I going to go about achieving this priority. You know, I got to pay my rent every week as opposed to every month. Well, my priority is I got to have this roof over my head.
Yeah.
What steps am I going to take to make that happen?
Right.
I quit my job, so I don't have gainful employment daily. Well, there's day labor. I got friends who need help fixing and painting and welding. You know, I'm going to call these people and I'm going to take proactive steps to go get a few dollars every day. And I'm going to put it to the side till I've met my rent that week.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now what's the next priority? You know, I got to have clean clothes. I know I need laundry detergent.
Mm-hmm.
So I set myself, now I write budgets.
Right.
So if I'm only making $100 a week and I have to pay $240, unfortunately, I can't spend that anywhere but where it needs to go.
I have an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, right. So you have to set your priorities and you have to budget. And the budget is not always just financial. I have to budget my time. I know I need to be to sleep at a certain time. Hello, little mamas. Yeah, we take some strays around here. This is mamas. This is little. Say hi, mamas. This is little mamas right here. Say hi, mama. This mamas. She's one of our neighborhood strays, but we love her.
Listen, we got to wrap this up. It's like 45 minutes, but let's end this on love. So
All right,
give us some love,
so
brother.
so man, I just want to tell and encourage everybody out there in your recovery, bro. We love you, and you can do it, man. It takes a warrior to fight, and we know how to live hard. We've done it. Living in addiction is hard, bro. Living on the streets is hard. But man, get yourself a home group. Get yourself a sponsor. Get around like-minded people fighting this fight. Hold each other accountable, and you'll see doors open, man. Just do the next right thing, and just do it one day at a time, man.
One day.
I love you, bro.
Love you too.
Subscribe to this channel. Hit my dog up. He's doing good things, bro.
Peace.
Peace.